covered the first home buyers, we went into newcomers, we even went into the foreign buyers tax. Let's switch the subject now, spice it up if you will, and ask you what's happening with pre-constructions. And I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. Obviously, everybody knows that the condo market has been on fire, right? For the past a few months. And the point is, pre-construction is becoming a very popular choice, as well as assignments, which are two different issues, but are actually interconnected.
Right.
So what's your take on it? And I'm asking your take as a legal professional, obviously.
Right.
So when someone is going to buy a pre-construction, what would you advise for them to do or not do?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very important piece, and I think it ties into first-time home buyers, especially because when they're buying pre-construction, they haven't had that experience in the past of closing other types of properties or even another pre-construction property. So they don't know what to watch out for in terms of the pitfalls. And even if you're not a first-time home buyer, if this is your first pre-construction purchase, again, you don't really know what to expect.
Exactly.
So it is very important and I think very relevant. So when we're looking at a pre-construction contract, the first thing to always remember is that if this is a condominium project, that means that it is governed by the Condominium Act, which is a piece of legislation, which very importantly provides a 10-day rescission period. So it's a termination period where after a buyer has signed the contract, they have 10 days to exit the contract without penalty.
So that's like a cooling off period.
Essentially, it's a cooling off period, and it's consumer protection legislation that essentially ensures that a buyer can go and have a legal professional review their contract and provide them with advice.
Right.
Because truthfully, there's a lot of information built within those contracts, and while it's very helpful to have marketing material and even the salespeople's advice for the developer, you do need to have somebody who is a legal professional acting for the buyer, reviewing that contract as well.
Actually, yeah, and I think our position and a more objective position as well is that when a buyer is interested in a pre-construction project, it's also good for them to have their own realtor.
Agreed.
Because at the end of the day, yes, the salesperson of the developer is going to help them, but that person is still
extent
working for the developer.
Exactly.
So they need someone that has their back. And of course, the lawyer is a very important part, as is the realtor. So yeah, please go on.
So during that 10-day cooling off period, we ask that those documents, essentially you go and you sign at the sales office, and you bring a copy in right away. And what we would be doing as lawyers is we look through this pre-construction agreement as well as the disclosure documents. So those are the proposed condominium documents that would be registered with this project. And what we're looking for essentially are hidden costs. There are terms that you will often hear called adjustments. And those are hidden costs that you pay in addition to the purchase price to the developer on closing.
Exactly. So, and I will just pause here for a second. These are things that Adam and I know as standard, but a lot of people out there that never bought pre-construction are not aware that apart from the standard closing costs, they have those adjustment costs.
Absolutely. And if you are going to be closing in 5 years' time, it's really important that you've budgeted from the beginning to be able to meet that closing, because you will have different expenses and life choices and just different situations and realities in 5 years' time. You need to make sure that you've accounted for those costs so that you'll have a smooth closing and be happy with that purchase.
So I have a question which I kind of know the answer, but I want to see what you think.
Okay.
How do I know the exact amount of those costs? Is it always defined from the very beginning when I buy a pre-construction?
Right. So part of our review, and it's a great question, Andrea. So part of our review would outline the adjustments, and we do outline costs that are known and costs that are not known. And that is actually quite a significant piece, because costs that are unknown, how do you budget for them? So we would try, and it depends on the industry, in terms of the state of the industry, the level of demand, the neighborhood, in terms of the project where it's being launched, but we always try to negotiate with the developer at that point to see if we can set limits on the unknown costs. So at least the clients or the buyers would have the ability to budget for the upper limit to be able to conservatively budget the closing costs.
So we can come to an agreement where we can go back, let's say the realtor that is representing the buyer can go back with the lawyer and say, look, we want to cap those adjustment costs because now there's a big portion here that says to be determined
Right.
at some point in the
Absolutely.
future.
And I just want to reiterate that it always is dependent on the project itself, the level of demand. If you have a really hot project and there's tons of demand, the developers don't have the same incentive
Right.
or motivation to try to limit those costs. But projects that are extremely popular, that you would probably expect to see greater appreciation over the period of time until the project is built, the developers would say, sorry, we're not gonna limit those costs. So it's an interesting point to definitely consider with that. But in addition to those adjustments, in addition to just understanding what your closing costs are going to be,
right?
It's always important to find out what a client's intention is with their property. Is it primary use? Are they planning on investing it? Is it just going to be a secondary suite? Are they leaving it vacant? Or maybe are they looking to not even close and to cash out based on the increase in the value of the paper contract, which is what's called an assignment.
So actually decide to sell the property, so they enter a contract with the developer to buy the property, they pay the deposit.
Right.
But their plan is, if this is going to be completed in 5 years, 4 years, that before completion, they will go out on the market and they'll say, you know what, I now want to sell this, I don't want to close, and I want to profit on the difference because I bought it 500, now it's 800, 700, whatever.
Depending on what those clients' intentions are, then we would need to ensure that the contracts, the pre-construction agreements with the developer incorporate the necessary clauses or terms to be able to allow your client to achieve, their goals. So if you're if you're buying the property for primary residence, we likely don't need to have an assignment clause, a free assignment clause in there, or an allowance for rental. But if you're going to rent it, or you want the ability to flip it in the future, or you're just not sure, we would want to make sure that we have certain provisions in there to allow you to either rent your property out during occupancy, because as an investor you'd care greatly about that, or to be able to assign it without paying a fee to the developer for their consent, which again is dependent on the contract and what's reasonable based on the market conditions.
And this is what I would advise people, that even if you don't care about these things,
you try.
You like people, try.
Exactly.
Because circumstances change.
Right.
Like we all have a plan of where our life is going to go.
Right.
But we don't necessarily know if that plan is going to work out in 5 years from now when we will have to do the closing.
Agreed.
So if we can have the assignment option in there, if we can have the lease option there, it's a good thing to have.
100%. And I just want to, again, reiterate the point that it is really important to make sure that you have professionals working on your side, because there are certain changes to the contract that a developer has authorized their sales office to make with your realtor when you've gone to the sales office. So there are certain things that your realtor can ask for to essentially benefit the client. And again, there are other things that a lawyer's office can ask from the developer that they are again authorized to make changes. So if you think you can do it on your own and go in and get the same type of deal, unfortunately they just aren't authorized to make those same types of concessions to buyers who are self-represented and don't have their agreements reviewed as well. So there is certainly benefit to that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Okay.
Alright.
I think that
it's a lot of information.
Yeah, a lot of information for one show, guys.
Yep.
A lot of information. Well, Adam, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
To have you, and if anybody has any questions for Adam, make sure that you ask me. You can use the comments below and ask me anything, and I can connect you directly with Adam if you want.
We're more than happy to help.
That's what we do. We help people, so that's what we do every day. So thank you very much for being with us today. Remember to like the show if you liked it, and actually share it if you think that it's going to be useful, especially after all this information that we discussed today. If you believe that it's going to be useful for someone else, make sure that you share it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.
All right, take care.
Take care, guys.